My name is Willie. Thank you all for watching the video. In this video, we are going to be talking about David Hawkins' Power versus Force. Power versus Force is one of the first books that David Hawkins created, which explains kinesiology in basic terms. But what I hear from many students is that David Hawkins expresses himself somehow very technical and they cannot understand, which it was hard for me as well in the beginning. And it was through repetition that I learned how to, through repetition, I was able to understand everything he was saying. And it became familiar just from reading it and watching the lectures so much. But in this video, I decided how can I make the book simpler so anyone can understand this. So what I did is I used an AI software to make a podcast and turn the video very simple. I turned it and I created a movie out of which it explains it really well, and it helps everyone that even if you are experienced, you might get some tips on it. And if you are not experienced at all and are new to it, you still are going to be able to understand it. So I hope you all enjoy the book. If you have any questions, concerns, or complaints, please feel free to share them in the comments. More videos coming soon. So thank you all for watching, and I appreciate everyone's support and love. Thank you.
Today we're diving into kinesiology, and let me tell you, this excerpt you sent over, it's wild.
It really makes you think differently about muscle testing, huh?
Totally. I mean, using muscles to detect truth and even measure the energy of consciousness, that's some next level stuff.
Yeah, not the kind of muscle testing you see at the gym.
Right. So have you ever heard of anything like this before? Using muscle testing to actually figure out if something's true or false?
It's definitely a new one for me, at least in this context.
Me too. So this book describes this system, right? Where one person holds their arm out, another person presses down on it, and the arm goes weak if you're thinking about something false, and it stays strong if it's true.
It's like a built-in lie detector, but in your muscs.
Yeah, a lie detector bicep curl or something.
Exactly. And it gets even weirder. The book claims that you can actually test the energy level of anything using this method.
So what, my breakfast could have a higher energy level than, I don't know, a rock.
Well, they use examples like, think about Abraham Lincoln versus Hitler.
Okay.
According to the book, people test weak when they hold an image of Hitler in mind, but strong with Lincoln.
Wait, so you're telling me my muscles can tell me if Abe Lincoln was a good guy?
That's what the book says, yeah.
Wow.
It suggests that, our bodies have this deeper knowledge, beyond our rational minds.
Okay, but what about something I don't even know the answer to? Can my muscles know something that I don't?
That's exactly what it claims, that even if you're in the dark about the truth, this test still works.
My muscles are truth wizards.
Right.
But, okay, hold on, because this excerpt goes even further. It starts talking about this thing called calibrating consciousness and assigning numbers to different levels of consciousness, all the way from just barely existing to full-on enlightenment.
Yeah, the map of consciousness, it's called.
Right.
And it uses a scale from 1 to 1,000.
1,000, wow.
The higher the number, the greater the supposed power and awareness.
So hold on, how do they figure out where something lands on this map? Don't tell me. Muscle testing.
You got it, of course.
Muscle testing for everything.
So, if I'm understanding this right, I could theoretically test where anything falls on this map, right? Like my breakfast, my dog, the latest news headline. Is anything off limits?
Nope. The book pretty much says it's all fair game.
Okay, so the map itself, this map of consciousness, the book breaks down these different levels, right?
Oh, yeah. It has some pretty vivid descriptions, too.
Okay, well, let's start at the bottom. What's the lowest level on this map?
Down at the very bottom, level 20, you've got shame.
Okay.
It's described as feeling totally powerless, almost like a non-person.
Man, that's heavy.
Yeah, not a good place to be.
No, not at all. So if we move up a little bit from there, what's next?
You hit guilt around 30, which leads to, self-punishment, playing the victim, that kind of thing.
Oof, still pretty rough.
And then you get to apathy at 50.
Apathy, okay. Yeah, and the book compares this level to the kind of despair and hopelessness you might see on the streets of Calcutta.
That's a powerful image for sure.
Intense, right?
So far, this map sounds pretty bleak. Is there any hope of climbing out of this pit of despair?
Well, the book does say that even grief at 75 has more energy than apathy.
Okay, so there's that at least.
But it's not until you reach courage at 200 that things really start looking up.
200, courage, okay.
Yeah, according to the book, that's the first level with, like, real power.
All right. I'm rooting for courage then.
It's where you find the energy to grow, to learn, and to actually overcome challenges, instead of just being crushed by them.
That makes sense, I guess.
So it's a turning point, for sure.
What comes after courage?
Well, next up is love, and it comes in at a whopping 500.
500, wow.
Yeah, it's all about unconditional love and forgiveness.
Okay.
And the book claims that a lot of, like, great spiritual figures throughout history, they actually calibrate at this level.
Interesting. So where do we go from there? Is it all just sunshine and rainbows from 500 and up?
Well, you've got enlightenment, which is way, way up at the top, between 700 and 1,000.
Enlightenment at the top of the mountain, huh?
It's described as this state of pure awareness where, like, everything is interconnected.
So 1,000 is like peak human experience. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the implication, but it also makes you wonder, like, what does that even mean in practical terms? And how do these levels of consciousness actually, play out in our lives?
Right. Like, how does all of this actually affect how we live, how we feel, the choices we make? That's what I'm really curious about.
Well, and this is where things get even more interesting. The book claims that, like, aligning with these, with high energy attractor patterns, which could be, positive emotions or truthful ideas or being around inspiring people, that this actually leads to better health.
Hold on. So you're saying that my thoughts and emotions, they can actually impact my physical health.
That's the claim.
How does that even work?
Well, the book talks about how stress isn't just about what's happening around you, it's about how you react to it.
Okay.
And your reactions, they're influenced by your level of consciousness, supposedly.
So if I'm stuck down there at shame or guilt level, even small things could send me into a stress spiral, basically.
Exactly. And the book suggests that if we're constantly aligning with these, low energy patterns like fear and negativity and all that, it creates a kind of like a chronic stress response in our bodies.
It's like those low energy patterns are attracting more stress into my life.
You could think of it that way.
So it's not just feeling stressed out, it's like this deeper thing that's actually impacting my health.
Right. And the book actually goes on to say that this chronic stress, it can actually manifest as physical symptoms and even contribute to, like, disease.
Wow. So our thoughts can literally make us sick.
That's what this book is suggesting, yeah.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, isn't it? It's like our bodies are always giving us feedback about the energy of our thoughts and beliefs, but we're usually not tuned in enough to notice those signals.
It's like driving around with the check engine light on and just ignoring it.
Exactly.
But okay, how do we actually do this muscle testing thing? Do I just like flex in front of the mirror and wait for answers to pop up?
Well, it's a bit more structured than that. The book actually lays out a pretty specific way to do these tests.
Okay.
And it actually emphasizes doing it with a partner.
No solo enlightenment bicep curls, huh?
Not quite. Yeah, it's definitely a two-person operation.
Okay, so walk me through it. How does this partner-based muscle test actually work?
All right, so imagine you and a friend are giving this a try. One of you is the test subject, right? And they hold their arms straight out to the side like this.
Got it.
The other person is the tester, and they press down on the subject's wrist, like right above the hand, with 2 fingers.
Okay.
And while they're pressing down, they say resist.
Okay, resist.
And the subject, they try to resist that downward pressure.
Makes sense. So where does all the truth detecting, consciousness measuring magic come in?
That's where the statements come in. So while the subject is resisting, either the tester or the subject says a sentence, a statement of some kind.
Okay.
And the book claims that the subject's arm will go weak if the statement is false.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it calibrates below 200 on that map of consciousness we talked about, if it's true, or if it calibrates above 200, the arm should stay strong.
So, okay, if I ask my friend, is the sky blue? While they're resisting, their arm should stay strong, right? Because that's true.
Right, exactly.
But if I say, is the moon made of cheese? Their arm should go weak.
Precisely. The book gives a bunch of, like, simple examples like that.
Right.
But then it gets into testing things that you don't even consciously know.
Oh, interesting.
So, like, imagine holding 2 apples.
Okay.
One's organic, one's not, right?
Okay.
And you test the statements, this apple is organic, and then this apple is not organic.
So even if I don't know which apple is which, my body will still, like, react differently based on the truth.
That's the idea. It's like, it's almost like your body has this innate knowledge or something.
It's a little freaky, not gonna lie.
It is kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, like, are my muscles reading my mind or something? It all seems a little, I don't know, too good to be true.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, it's definitely pushing the limits of what we normally consider, like, possible, you know?
Totally.
But, this is just what the book claims. Whether or not it actually works, that's a whole other question.
Right, right.
And that's where the book really encourages people to just, like, experiment for themselves.
So try it out and see what happens.
Exactly.
Okay, well, what are some of the things the book suggests testing? Like, if I wanted to give this a go, where do I even start?
Well, it starts with those basic true or false statements, like the ones we just talked about.
Right, okay.
But then it gets into calibrating, like, the energy level of things using that map of consciousness.
Okay, yeah, remind me how that calibration thing works again. It's been a minute.
All right, so let's say you want to test the energy of a book,
Okay.
or where it falls on that consciousness map.
Okay,
So you would start by asking, does this book calibrate above 200?
all right, 200, got it.
And if your friend's arm stays strong, you move up, right,
Okay.
to 300, then 400, and so on.
And you keep going up until their arm goes weak.
Exactly.
And that means you've found, like, the book's approximate spot on the map, right?
That's the idea. Yeah, you've hit the book's calibration level.
Okay, so this map, it goes from 1 to 1,000, right?
Right.
With all these descriptions of each level, and you're saying, I can test anything. Historical figures, political systems, like even my own thoughts and feelings.
According to the book, yep, it's all fair game.
So I could literally test, does my fear of spiders calibrate above 500?
That's what it suggests, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
And it presents it as a way to become more aware of what we're aligning with, like, energetically.
It's like a whole new way of looking at the world.
In a way, yeah.
This is all incredibly intriguing, but also a little overwhelming. Like, if I can test the energy of anything, where do I even begin?
Well, the book really emphasizes starting with yourself, like using muscle testing to kind of identify any limiting beliefs you have
Okay.
or negative patterns that might be holding you back.
So kind of like a self-help muscle test.
Yeah, exactly. And it also encourages using it to make, like, more conscious choices.
About what kind of things?
About who you spend time with, what information you consume, even what kind of environments you put yourself in.
So I can test my friends, my bookshelf, my favorite coffee shop. This is getting pretty out there, don't you think?
Well, it definitely requires, an open mind.
Yeah, for sure.
But the main idea is that by, like, aligning ourselves with higher energy things, we can actually create, a more positive and fulfilling life.
Okay, I'm willing to entertain that idea. Let's say I want to give this whole thing a shot. What are some things I need to keep in mind? Like, when I'm doing these tests, are there any rules or guidelines?
Well, one thing the book really stresses is being, like, neutral and objective.
Okay.
You don't want your own biases or desires to influence the results.
So no wishing really, really hard for my favorite band to calibrate at 1,000.
Right. It's more about approaching the tests with a sense of, like, curiosity and detachment.
Okay, that makes sense.
It also cautions against trying to predict the future or answer questions that aren't rooted in facts.
So no asking if I'll win the lottery or if my crush is secretly in love with me?
Probably best to stick to things that are, like, verifiably true or false,
Gotcha, so keep it factual.
Exactly.
So with these tests, the more you do them, the better you get at them.
That's what the book suggests. Yeah, like any skill, it takes practice.
And experimenting with different people and in different situations, I imagine.
Exactly.
This is definitely a lot to take in.
It is.
But it's also, like, incredibly fascinating.
It really is. It's like opening up this whole new way of understanding ourselves and the world.
Well, before we test the energy level of every single thing in my apartment, let's talk about how this all connects to stress, like that everyday experience we all have.
Yeah, good point. Let's bring it back down to earth a little bit.
So we've got this whole muscle testing thing, maybe it
Uh-huh.
can tell us what's true, maybe it can show us different levels of consciousness, but I'm curious how this all connects to, like, stress,
Right.
because that's something we all experience pretty much every day, right?
Absolutely. And the book actually makes this really interesting point about stress, that it's not just about what's happening outside of us.
Right, like the external stuff.
Yeah, it's really more about how we react to it internally. And those reactions, they're connected to our level of consciousness, supposedly.
Okay, so walk me through that a little bit. Like, how does our level of consciousness, how does that affect our stress levels?
Well, think about it like this. If someone's operating from, say, fear level,
Okay.
they're going to have a way more intense reaction to a challenge than someone who's coming from like courage level.
Right, because they're already in that fearful state.
Yeah, and the book suggests that if we're like constantly aligning with these lower energy patterns,
Like fear, worry, that kind of thing.
exactly, that it actually creates this chronic stress response in our bodies.
So it's like those lower energies are actually attracting more stress into my life.
You could think of it that way, yeah.
That's kind of scary, actually.
Yeah, it is a bit, and the book even says that this kind of chronic stress can show up as physical symptoms. It can even make you sick.
So we're not just talking about feeling stressed out. We're talking about our thoughts actually impacting our physical health.
That's the claim, yeah. It's like a mind-body connection, but on a whole other level.
So how does that work? Like, how does the book explain that link between our thoughts and our physical well-being?
Well, it gets into the science a little bit, talking about how positive attitudes, they release endorphins, right? Which are supposed to like strengthen the body.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then on the flip side, negative emotions like anger or fear, they release adrenaline, which actually weakens certain organs over time.
So it's like we get stuck in those negative thought patterns and our bodies are paying the price for it, basically.
Yeah, it's almost like our bodies are trying to give us feedback all the time,
Right.
you know, about whether our thoughts are healthy or unhealthy, but we're just not paying attention.
It's like we're ignoring all the warning signs.
Totally.
Like, again, that check engine light analogy.
Exactly.
Oh, the book also mentioned something about acupuncture meridians. How do those fit into all of this?
Yeah, so the book suggests that different emotions can actually affect how energy flows through those meridians.
Right, which are those like energy pathways throughout the body, right?
Exactly. So if you're always stuck in like fear or anger or whatever, it can create blockages, imbalances in your energy system.
Okay, so to sum it up, this book is basically saying that by raising our level of consciousness and aligning with more of those higher energy patterns, that we can actually reduce stress and improve our health, our well-being, all that.
That's the gist of it, yeah. And it presents this as something that's, that's testable, experiential, not just a theory.
Right.
You can use kinesiology to see if it actually holds up.
So this whole concept of like, our energy and our thoughts and how they affect us, it really is a new way of looking at things, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you wonder, like how much power do we actually have over our health and our experiences just by shifting our mindset?
That's a big question. And this excerpt also goes beyond like just personal stuff.
Yeah. What do you mean?
It talks about how kinesiology could be used in like other fields, medicine, business, even criminal justice.
Oh, wow. That's taking it pretty far.
It is, right.
Yeah.
Like using muscle testing to, I don't know, confirm a medical diagnosis or evaluate a business deal sounds pretty out there.
Definitely pushes the boundaries of how we normally think about muscle testing.
For sure. But the book suggests, for example, that you could use kinesiology to figure out if a certain treatment is actually working for someone.
Interesting.
Or to test the honesty of a potential employee, which is pretty wild.
That's a whole new level of like background check, isn't it?
It really is. But I guess the question is how reliable is all of this? I mean, we're talking about some pretty extraordinary claims.
Yeah, you definitely want to approach these ideas with a healthy dose of skepticism, for sure.
Right, like not just believing everything you read.
Exactly. And the book, it actually acknowledges that, that not everyone's going to buy into this, but it really encourages people to try it out for themselves, to experiment, see what happens.
See if it works for them.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, personal experience is probably the most powerful teacher,
That's true. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the main takeaway? What do you hope people walk away with from all of this?
Whether or not someone actually believes in muscle testing, I think the real value of all of this is in the questions it makes us ask. It challenges us to think about consciousness in a totally different way.
Yeah, to think outside the box.
Exactly, and to really consider, what are the energetic consequences of our choices, and to really acknowledge that connection between our minds and bodies. That's huge.
It's like this book is offering us a new lens, to view the world through. And even if we don't see everything perfectly through that lens, it can still give us like these really cool insights,
Totally. It reminds us that there's still so much that we don't know.
Right.
About ourselves, about the universe, and maybe, just maybe, the answers are closer than we think.
I like that.
Maybe they're right there in our own bodies and our own wisdom.
Yeah, that's a really cool thought. Well, we've definitely covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've gone from muscle testing to truth to consciousness to stress to like the whole mind-body connection, and it's been a wild ride.
And we've only just scratched the surface of this excerpt, really.
And no, there's so much more to explore.
That's the beauty of it, right? It's an invitation to keep learning, to keep asking questions.
To keep diving deeper.
Exactly. And who knows what other amazing discoveries are waiting out there.
That's a great place to end it. That's it for our deep dive into kinesiology and the map of consciousness.
Hope you enjoyed it.
We hope you enjoyed the conversation. And maybe you'll even feel inspired to do some experimenting of your own.
Try it out. See what you discover.
And until next time, keep asking those questions, keep seeking truth, and as always, keep diving deep.